Hi, Jeff here, working on another park car here, and I had a topic I want to do on all three of my video books. I want to cover it in each of one of them separately because I think that the perspectives are very different on this. It's about money and how I'm going to talk about how Americans view money um, within a couple of those different dimensions that we've been talking about. The Hofstede and all they talked about, the short-term versus long-term dimension, and another one about the indulgence versus restraint dimension. Um, and in the other there are other things about the future and all that. I mean, you can see the different perspectives here, but the so I think the money thing is a really interesting one because it's something that we have to deal with every day, right? And so I've talked about how the other cultures do it, and so I'm coming to the American one. And the Americans is funny. Americans see, investments. They talk a lot about their, their savings, right? And it's kind of an important thing. And because it's a culture where things are expensive, you got to think about the future of how you're going to pay for those things. How you're going to pay for your kids' education. You're going to have to pay for, with the kids that one day may want to, buy something, like a car or a house. So there will be a lot of them, talk about that, which in the French is there's a taboo to talk about these topics, right? But the French, the Americans, as you're going to work with them, it's really important to see that that they they perceive money as something that's just you make it, you spend it. However, you invest in it too, um, and investments are not always about they're not always about getting something out of it at the end, like a return on investment off some kind of account. Okay, we're going to make interest off it. It's not always making interest. It's really important to make a distinction here. I'm talking to those other ones. It's not about making interest off the thing. You're going to sell the thing. You're going to buy an investment. And you're going to resell it, and you're going to make money off of that. That's not. That's not what this is always about. It's about what do you get out of the length of that that thing, that asset or service you buy. How much satisfaction do you get out of it over a period of time, right? So the whole indulgence and restraint thing is you indulgence is short term satisfaction, right? The more ephemeral short term satisfaction. Whereas restraint is not it's a restraint can be more along the lines of not investing in the things that will only have short-term satisfaction, right? They're things that you would be investing only in the things that are going to have long-term satisfaction, which brings us back to the short-term and long-term dimension. So the restraint thing doesn't mean it can actually combine with the short-term versus long-term and actually work together with it, and and so you have to think about that when you're doing the concerning the cultural values and how those are seen with regard to money, and really in how you're perceiving this and how you're when you talk about things you have to talk about you have to see these you have to and even there can be misinterpretations of like the whole thing of investment, how people see investments and all that, because investments again when I had to talk to a colleague and I said that there was a mention of kind of its assets thing, and I said, yeah, but that's not what the investment doesn't mean getting money out of it in the end, right? That's going to be one way of doing things, right? But it's not always the way of doing. It's not the only way of seeing the satisfaction of the investment. Satisfaction of the investment again does not always mean that you're selling, reselling it again at the end to make money, a profit off of it. That's not what reselling. That's not what the indulgence constraint is, and the restraint constraint dimensions are, or short term, long term. It's you can get a lot of satisfaction out of a car in which you invest in, that you use for a period of years. It can be 2 years, 4 years, 8 years, 10 years, 15 years, whatever. And you depending how long you decide to maintain that guitar and car. I'm sorry, and you know keep it up, keep it up, and keep it maintenance and all that stuff. You can get a lot of satisfaction at the end, even if at the end you only resell it for a small percentage of what you actually bought it for. The satisfaction is long term over a period of, it's a satisfaction is long term, and it's a restraint in that if you choose not to indulge in everything all the time, but you choose to get a car, and the cars that you're going to invest in, right, the things you're going to do, you're going to get a lot of, because you're going to spend a lot of time in that car, right? Americans have spent a lot of time in the cars because they don't have the public transport system, and most of the places suck, right? So you can't. So I can try to get the light here, but the darn lighting is hard to deal with. The sun. It's been cold, and it's just like sun coming out again. It was raining yesterday. Um, so this is something to consider, really important as you begin to understand and work with Americans, how they perceive this and how other cultures perceive this, like the Germans and the French and other. Everybody perceives this completely differently. I'm sorry, but I'm really trying to get this lighting here. It's kind of a pain here. That's trying to do this in a non-studio environment, right? But the Americans see this as you invest in the assets to get long-term satisfaction. So it's a restraint concept that you don't just buy and get everything now. You don't do everything short-term. You buy and invest in certain things that are going to have longer-term investments, right? And because there's so little vacation time, which is really indulgence, right? Short-term indulgence. Vacation time is short-term indulgence in general, right? So you don't spend too much time on those things, but you'll invest in the other things in which allow you to get a lot of pleasure out of something that, like a car, you're going to be listening to you're going to listen to radio, so you're going to have a better stereo system in the car because you're going to spend a lot of time driving the car all the time. That's how Americans kind of deal with this, right? So because you spend a lot of time, you're going to invest more in the car. Whereas others may say, hey, we just have to have short-term things made for little trips all the time, and that's it. But they don't drive in cars very much because they're in like the countries that have good public transport. I don't put very much mileage in my car, right? I put maybe 2,000, maybe 3,000, maybe 4,000 kilometers in my car in 1 year. Whereas most people, like they drive, they're going to be doing 12,000, right? And that's even low compared to other people that might be 20,000 if they're in a car all the time driving because of their job, right? But I put so little, I put so little on that I'm not caring about. I don't even know. I actually was looking at my radio here because I look at my radio because I spend so much because I'm in a French environment, but I'm American. I wasn't even thinking about my radio. When I switched cars, I didn't even care about what the radio was because I spend so little time in the car. I don't care about the radios, right? So I just realized today I don't even have a USB plug-in to put a USB stick with the music on it. I only have a CD player, right? A radio and CD player. I didn't even realize this until yesterday when I thought, hey, do I have a USB stick with some music? I can't even play it because I spend so little time in the car, right? Whereas some people will buy the car and they'll specifically want to have that add-on so they can actually because they're going to spend a lot of time and they're going to be listening to music in the car all the time. I didn't turn my radio on, right? Because my trips are so short. It's my kids get in the car. My son gets in the car. He'll turn the radio on immediately, right? But I don't because my trips are so short. It's like I got other things to think about, right? So I didn't even think about this. He turns it on immediately, but I don't because my trips are too short, right? And it doesn't matter. I got other things, like I said, I got other things to think about during the trip to get to the next destination. The trip for me is just another get to point A to point B, and it's a moment I can think about other things, right? So I have a completely different perspective of how I see the need for the radio in the car based on a combination of French and American stuff compared to my son who's always lived in France, right? Very interesting. So here I don't have an answer to everything, but I just want to bring this up and just have, us to understand that there are different views and how you perceive these things as necessary or not, and how much money you put into them when you buy them, and this can actually help close or block deals with different people from different countries. So keep it in mind when you're dealing with Americans and all others and other people from other cultures. Make sure on these topics that you understand this when you're talking about this and how you're making talks to people or you're presenting to people and they have a different perspective on money, on investments, on short-term, long-term satisfaction, all that, indulgence. Keep that in mind when you're giving talks because it can help. You can actually be misinterpreted and then the meaning of your talk may actually what you intended to be won't even be, it won't be well valued, right? So, or well perceived. So keep that in mind when you're doing presentations. All right, thanks. Jeff out in the parked car.